There are far too many victims of financial fraud and crime in this country, and very often they form together their own little groups. Well, today, something remarkable happened. They came together as one big collective group and did a march under the banner Enough is Enough, and GBNews' Adam Cherry was there to find out what happened.
That's right, Nigel. Yeah, so it was a big march today, actually. I was surprised. I think some of the people there were surprised by how many people were there. And the important thing to say about this is it's organised by the Transparency Task Force. It's not just one or two groups over a specific issue like pension fraud or investment fraud. It's all of them together. Because they've realised that their voice is more powerful in that way, and more likely to get noticed, as it has done today. So it started outside the Royal Courts of Justice. I spoke to the leader of the task force, a man called Andy Agathangelo, and this is what he had to say when he was explaining why he was here and what he's hoping for out of today's marches. Let's take a look at this.
This is so important, Adam, because today's meeting isn't about any one individual campaign organisation. What makes this wonderful gathering different is that everybody has learned that individually the campaign groups are not strong enough. We're all coming together. We all know that enough is enough, and that's why we're doing what we're doing today. We're campaigning for justice. Specifically, we're campaigning for people who've been harmed as a direct consequence of financial misconduct, regulatory failure, egregious misconduct by various institutions. Enough is enough, Adam. We're here to try and sort it out.
So, as you see, an impassioned speech there, very strong. And actually, I spoke to him just before the camera rolled. He was talking about a chap called Ian, who was a member of this task force, knew Andy a little bit, and unfortunately, he took his own life in the last few months because of pressure from the authorities, and he'd lost all his money and there was no sympathy, and he was just a lawnmower salesman. I say just, but you know, there was some, often when you see these sort of scandals, it's high profile people, footballers and so on. And actually there are some of those there today, but Ian's story was telling, because this can happen to anyone. It's the common man story. So march continued. We went along to the Treasury, and they were carrying, as I say, it's going all through central London, they were carrying the coffin of what represented the victims of suicides. Yeah. So there's lots of...
I see that.
Yeah, exactly. As you see there's the footage. And so that represents those who have been lost, and they placed it outside HMRC's head office this afternoon before heading to Parliament and Downing Street. There you see the image for those watching on television. As I said, I spoke to some of the more high-profile people as well. I spoke to Craig Shaw, who is a former... he's an ex-professional footballer and
Premier League footballer.
Premier League, yeah, used to play for Everton in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I asked him why he was here. Had he been affected by this? It turns out he hadn't, but it's a common problem for footballers who get involved in this sort of thing. And this is what he had to say.
Hoping for reform. You know, I've heard stories there. People have been fighting this for 20 years. Groups have been fighting for 20 years. People have passed away from natural causes. I've mentioned the suicides, of course. And the momentum's building. We're all looking people to look at the information, look at the evidence. A chap in the meeting there in the press conference said that fraud accounted for 40% of reported crime in this country. And I think 8% gets solved. So that's an absolute disgrace. It's a national scandal. And on behalf of our group and all the other groups I've been marching with today, that needs looking into.
Presumably, you know, we have the FCA, we have regulatory authorities. It seems the biggest complaint these groups have got is really against them and HMRC as well.
That's right, yeah. There's a general feeling that they're under-resourced, but also when the likes of HMRC get in touch with under-resourced in respect to helping combat scams. But once all that happens and they're now being investigated themselves, HMRC are allegedly very bullish. You know, they send letter after letter after letter. When you need help from them, it's very difficult. When you're in trouble, they get in touch with you very, very easily.
Yes, I mean, you could receive a large lump sum of money.
Yeah.
You haven't got to pay tax on it for 6 months or whatever. You put some of the money into an investment, you get defrauded, you've lost your money, but you still get a tax bill.
Yeah. So I spoke to a barrister today at the press conference who's doing work for these guys pro bono, and he said, yeah, you have money stolen and then you're taxed for income you never received. And what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, other countries would treat people in this position as victims, but the HMRC assumption seems to be that people are guilty, and it's up to them to prove their innocence. Adam, it's obviously very impressive that this has been put together today, and well done to the Transparency Task Force. And I get the argument they're stronger together than being little individual groups. But where does this go from here?
Well, that's the question. And so their plan at the moment is to get a statutory public inquiry to at least get the ball rolling, to understand, a little bit like the sub-postmasters scandal. It's incrementally, little bits and pieces. We do more and more on this. I say they and the media attention on this. Through public scrutiny, perhaps leads to a more substantial outcome further down the road. They're not expecting magic overnight, because that would be unrealistic. But it's an incremental process that starts with things like this, I think.
Interesting. Adam, thank you very much indeed.